So you also launched the On3 women's vertical, right, for that On3 platform. I mean, that is a huge responsibility. You did that in May. How have the last 3 months been going for you?
They've been great. I mean, it's really, really awesome that On3 took the initiative to launch a women's vertical because there aren't that many sites doing it. And obviously the traction that women's sports is gaining right now is so impressive. So it was very, very, very cool. And I'm very honored that they thought of me for this. So the last 3 months have been busy doing a lot of women's basketball recruiting stuff, some traveling, and getting ready for the college basketball season, which I think everyone is going to really enjoy this year.
Wow, I don't know how you're going to balance all that. I'm sure you're a pro at this point with everything that's on your plate. That's amazing. For those who might not know what On3 is, could you kind of introduce us to what it is and what you do?
Yeah, so On3 is an online company that is really at the forefront of recruiting news, is what the specialty is, but also is phenomenal at covering college news and breaking news and kind of a little bit of everything. And they've been doing basketball and football on the men's side for a few years now, and then just added a women's sports vertical. So I'm kind of leading the charge right now on women's basketball, but they also just acquired Softball America, which is really cool. So lots of softball coverage. They got some volleyball, some gymnastics, and really just letting fans in on recruiting news, where everyone's at. And it's been fun kind of getting to do this as a junior in college is something I never thought I'd be doing, but it's very, very awesome to get to work with them.
You've already done so much in your career because I saw that you were also a beat reporter for the Carolina Hurricanes. You've been doing this for a while. So how did you really become passionate about sports and realize this is what you wanted to do for a career?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I honestly had no interest in it and thought I would never end up doing this in a million years. I thought I was going to be an actress, which was a far-fetched dream and never would have happened. But I kind of followed my dad around. He's a men's basketball reporter, and so I was following him around as a kid a lot. And at first, when I would go to games with him, I would bring a book and I would read the entire time. I would not even watch the games. I had no interest. But as I grew up and got into high school, I realized that this job is kind of another stage. And not acting, but it's another way of it a little bit. You're still storytelling, but you're telling the stories of other people, which is the part of it that I really love. And so, going around with him to games and being able to interview players gave me kind of a sneak peek of what I love. And then I fell in love with hockey, actually, and started covering the Canes a little bit. And then when I got to college, it really all just kind of jump-started, and I fell in love with women's basketball completely and have loved working with this sport and helping tell the stories of these athletes and coaches.
Well, you're in good company because we're both hockey lovers.
Indeed. Yeah, I love that part of it. But honestly, I never got to cover too much basketball in my career so far. But another thing I want to bring up is the fact that not a lot of us get to grow up with TV personalities in their home. I mean, my parents definitely don't do anything related. So what was it like for you growing up with your father kind of being there as this influence? And do you have maybe an earliest memory where you felt the passion start to grow for this career path?
I think for me, it was probably my sophomore year of high school. Once I'd kind of decided that I wanted to get into this, my dad brought me to a Celtics game as a fan. It was actually, I think, only the second Celtics game I'd ever been to, and I'd lived in Boston my whole life pretty much. And I went there, and we went back after the game, and I thought I was just going to go back and meet some players, which was so cool as it was, right? But then my dad let me interview Jason Tatum, which I don't think I realized how cool that was in the moment even, but now I look back at it, and I'm like, one of my first interviews I ever did is with Jason Tatum. I don't know. I think that was kind of the moment that I realized that I wasn't good. Trust me, I was not good then. But that was the moment I realized that I could be good, and it was really fun for me to kind of feel that high pressure situation, especially not knowing I was going to be doing it beforehand. But it was great growing up in a house with someone who has done this. The amount of times that I still call my dad every single day with questions is so helpful. It has got to be no less than 5 times a day. I'm like, hey, what do I do right now? How do I solve this situation? Can you look at this before I tweet it? Whatever it may be. And so it's been really helpful, and obviously a very unique experience growing up with my dad covering men's college basketball.
What's some of the best advice that he's given you?
I think the biggest thing is just make sure you're 100% accurate before you put anything out, because there are a lot of people who kind of just, you hear something and you believe it's true and you think you can just have one source because you trust that source so much. But I think the biggest thing is making sure, you're checking with multiple sources and you're 100% positive on what you're putting out, because your credibility is the most important thing to help you keep your job and get new jobs in the future. And these people trust what they see online from you, and you want them to trust you. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned from him. But there are just so many things. Like when I tell you, I talk to him every day and I feel like I learned something new.
Well, Talia, I've related to a lot of what you said, especially when you said, I wasn't really interested in pursuing this as a career until high school. I was the same way. I never really became interested in sports kind of until high school. But I'm curious for you, what your dad's reaction was when you came to him and you were, reading the books in the stands for so many years and you're like, actually, this is what I want to do. How did he react?
No, he literally laughs. Like, to this day, he was here a few weeks ago. I have my wisdom teeth out. So he was here and we were walking by Assembly Hall and he was like, this is just so weird for me. Like, the first game that we covered together, I was covering men's basketball last year for my school. And he was like, this is so weird to be here, like, doing this together. Like, you hated sports. Like, what is this world? This is like an alternate universe. My mom is even the same way. She's like, who are you? Like, this is not my daughter. I feel like we switched daughters at the age of 15.
That's awesome. Well, something I wanted to ask you about is, I guess we were talking about that work-life balance. Laura and I were talking about that a little bit earlier. And then you as a college student, you're doing so much. And I think like the main question I want to ask you is, how do you balance all of this? What is your day-to-day like, especially now, junior year?
Not very well. I'm working on it. It's hard. Like, I heard you guys talking about it before. It is definitely hard because I am someone who loves to work. Like, I love what I do. I love to work. I want to be the best version of myself I can be within work. But being in college, it's definitely tough. I mean, I'm, taking 4 classes right now. I'm doing some sideline reporting for Big Ten Plus as well. I'm covering our volleyball team here alongside having this gig covering National Women's Basketball and trying to have a social life and all of that. So it definitely is challenging, but I think the biggest thing is just time management, and kind of what works for me is just scheduling everything out on my notes app when I wake up every morning or before I go to bed, and finding the time I have to go to the gym or go for a walk or hang out with friends or like whatever it may be. But if I don't do that, I find myself working like 12 hours a day because I'm just like passionate about it, and I want to make sure that I am doing the best I can, especially, being newer to this women's basketball world. I want to prove that I'm, passionate about it and love it, and will do everything I can to help, do what I can to grow the game as much as I can.
Well, that's super admirable. And I want you to know that a lot of people are going to take notice at this hustle that you're developing at such a young age to balance not only being a student, passing classes, passing exams, but also going on live TV or doing those kinds of things. It's like, for me, I went to the University of New Hampshire and I was reporting while I was a student. But Friday, Saturday nights, I was at the hockey rink or doing a football game instead of going out with my friends. So there are some things that you might have to kind of put on the back burner. But I want you to know that, like, the effort and the hustle that you're developing right now will definitely help you succeed, because we always talk about like thinning the herd. Like, a lot of people want to do this line of work, but they just can't commit to it because of that lack of time. But regarding your college, do you have like a broadcast program through your university? I'm not familiar. So like, is there like a newsroom, or how do you do it at school?
Yeah, so it's actually one of the best sports media programs in the country, which is why I, decided to come here, and I love it. And there's so many kind of educational in-class opportunities. It's a sports media program, so there's a bunch of specialized classes I'm even in right now, but it's more about what they offer outside of the classes than anything. They have so many things you can do. I'm part of this organization called the Hoosier Network, which is fully student run, and it's a multimedia company where they kind of give everyone a beat to be on. So when I first got here freshman year, I was on women's soccer and women's basketball. And so every year, and then last year I was on volleyball, this year I'm on volleyball. So everyone gets assigned a beat, but there's also a TV station here. There's a newsroom here. There's Big Ten Plus, which is my favorite part of it, which means you get to be on live TV. And I've done some sideline reporting for them, and getting that on-air experience is like unprecedented. So there are so many opportunities in Indiana, which is why I decided to come here. And of course, like, there are so many other great broadcast schools, but I think the education that you get here is like second to none.
Something that I always like to ask women that are still, or men, anybody that's still reporting in college sports as a college student themselves, is what's that dynamic like? Because I remember when I was a college student and I was working for the Stanford Daily writing stories, and on Monday I would be interviewing an athlete, and then on Tuesday I would be sitting next to them in like calculus or Spanish class, and it's kind of this interesting dynamic. So what's it been like for you?
I don't know. I think I try to keep it as separate as I possibly can, just because that's something that my dad also taught me, is like, obviously you don't want that conflict of interest to ever come into play, but for sure it's funny when I'm like sitting right next to a volleyball player after I just covered a match of theirs, like in class, like, of course I'll say hi and be friendly because we're the same age, right? Like, we're the exact same age. We're in kind of a similar spot where, every time you're in a match, I'm in a match too with you. So, it definitely is an interesting dynamic, but I think it's more interesting that I only cover women's sports, so I feel like it's more to be like friendly and have more of that like friend vibe with the women's athletes, even just as you're covering them too.
truly what I said there at the end, like Talia, she's one of the most relatable interviews I think that we've done so far in this podcast. And I would like to get your kind of reaction too, because we both were reporters in college, and getting to see how she's kind of moving through the industry. I mean, it seems like she's doing it so well and so professionally. Everything she said, I'm like, wow, you're like a real pro. But what was your biggest takeaway from that?
I mean, it's good to hear that like students are dedicating themselves to this, because that's truly what it takes, is like the hustle, the time commitment. I think she's so professional already. The fact that she's talking about conflicts of interest. It's like the hard thing about
that stuck out to me too. I was like, you know what you're talking about for sure. You're really taking this seriously.
that was really good to hear. And honestly, kudos to her dad for taking the initiative on that point. Because unfortunately, you know, some people, they join the industry for the wrong reasons, and they really want to be friends with people, and it's good to be friends with people, but the fact is you do have to remain that professionality. And the approach she has, the way she explained it all, it's like, you know, she's got her head on the wow, how do you say that? Head on her shoulders in the right way. Yeah, there we go. Coffee is needed.
Yeah, we're getting to the end of the episode. Get us off air. I'm like, wow. No, I'm just kidding.
Speak, Natalie. No, but I think she's great. She's got her head in the right place. It's just enlightening to hear that teenagers, however old she is, they have an idea and they want to stick to the game plan and just do it right.
Yeah. I loved what she said too about interviewing Jason Tatum. It was like one of the first interviews she ever did, and she like wasn't even really nervous because she didn't know kind of what like how big of a deal that was. And I think kind of it reminds me too, like the farther I've gone into this career, almost the more pressure I put on myself to perform and do well, because you realize like you care so much and you've been putting so much into this career, and you want to be so perfect all the time. But when you're just starting out, you kind of have that like freedom, and you're just doing it for fun, and you're just trying to kind of, you know, see what works. And I think that was kind of a good reminder. Bring it back. Just remember why you started and kind of the feelings that you had when you started. You're just trying to figure out what works, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. You know, it's an interview with Jason Tatum, but at the end of the day, he's just another basketball player.
Plus, I think the best way, her dad had the right approach there too, just like threw her into it. She didn't know what she was doing. I think the best way to learn is just by doing it. And sometimes when you get thrown to the wolves, you end up, you know, leading the pack, whatever that quote says. But I think she obviously has some great role models in her life. When I was a student at UNH, there were a few other students, you know, at Hockey East schools doing the same thing. And it was great to see this community of students doing the job, doing the work, doing class, all that stuff. And I give a lot of credit to people who can commit to that, because like there were a lot of friends I made who ended up leaving the industry, or they stuck to it and they're in some really successful places now. So I think as long as you maintain that hustle and all that, I think you've got the right path ahead of you, and she does, obviously.
Yeah, and I meant what I said when I said that some of the best reporters covering college sports are students, because to your point, when I go to Hockey East schools and I'm covering games, I always try to make sure that I'm connecting with the students, because they do such a good job. And I want them to realize, I'm like, no, you do have a future in this industry. Like the stuff that you're putting out, even as a student, is on par with the rest of the industry. Right. So, I mean, student journalists, they're amazing, and I wish that everybody supported them. Okay, we're going to move into wins of the week here before we jump off air. I can get us started. So mine's actually kind of like a golf win, and it's a little different. So I follow this golf influencer. Her name is Haley Buchholz. I follow her on Instagram. If you're looking to get into the game of golf, definitely check her out. She's got, you know, a very aesthetic vibe going on. It is very inspiring. It makes me want to become a golf girl. But she actually played in the Pro-Am for the BMW Pro-Am last week. And she was one of the only women playing in the Pro-Am. It was like, you know, the celebrities play with the pros, and she was one of the celebrities. And she birdied on 16, and they had this video of her when she did this, and just the joy and how much she was just the love that she showed. And what's interesting too about her story is she used to play golf at Elon, and then she stopped for a while, just because I think, especially, you know, playing college golf, there's a lot of pressure on you. And even as being like a college athlete myself, you sometimes lose the passion for your sport after that, and you're just like, I just want to be done. But she's found her way back into golf over the past few years. It's been really trying to enjoy it, and seeing her go out there and now competing in tournaments again and truly enjoying herself and getting that exciting moment on 16 in front of the grandstands and everybody cheering her on. And even I think there was somebody that said like, yay, women's sports, was like clapping her on.
That's awesome.
Or clapping her on.
We're having trouble
cheering her on. Yeah, that was such a great moment.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's great. Talk about performing under pressure too. You got all the stands there. Haven't played golf maybe competitively in a while, and then pulling off a birdie. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Good for her. Maybe I'll look into it. I don't follow too many influencers, but I'll get into it.
If you want to get into golf, follow her.
I love golf. Golf's a great sport. Mine's about the U.S. Open tennis that started on Monday this week. I wanted to talk a little bit about Madison Keys. Now, she's 29. She's been playing, I think her first major accomplishment was when she was 15, 16 years old. But this season, 2024, has been a bit difficult for her. Missed the Australian Open with an injury. She had an injury at Wimbledon, just a minor setback. But she prioritized her health, pulled out of the 2024 Olympics in Paris so that she could compete in the U.S. Open. And she kind of said, at 29 years old, my body isn't what it used to be. In order to preserve my career, my health, and all those kinds of things, I do need to kind of pace out my season differently. And unfortunately, these athletes, your bodies can only hold up to that level for so long, which is a really harsh reality sometimes. But for someone to be able to prioritize their career, their health, and really put them in a situation to succeed, I think is a testament to the mental endurance and the mental strength a lot of athletes you don't really get to see because it's all in here. But she really prioritized her season, and she said, okay, well, I'll have to sit a couple of things out that I have done in the past that have been amazing for me. But in order to do what I want and for my future, I'm going to have to make sure that I take care of myself. And I think that's probably a hard thing to come to terms with. And maybe you can, add to this, because I think as an athlete, I stopped after high school. I don't know what it's like in college, but I think it's just a testament to mental strength and deciding what's good for you and doing what's best. So I think that's a win for the week, is just a woman in sports really kind of speaking out on something that's very important. And sometimes certain things have to take a backseat in order for you to succeed elsewhere.
Well, I think it's even related to the conversation we had earlier, just about work-life balance, about finding that balance between pushing yourself athletically and realizing that you still have the rest of your life ahead of you. I remember when I was at Stanford and I was rowing, I was in a lot of pain a lot of the time, and you just push through it because it's well, you know what, my career is not going to go on past my experience at Stanford, so you can just give everything you have for the time that you're there, and then it's over. But for these professional athletes, they can give as much as they can for as long as they can until their body kind of gives out. So I would imagine it's much more of a weighing of the pros and cons. So I love that you brought that up. I think that's a really great win. Yeah,
I mean, I knew a lot of D1 skiers in college, and they would go through injuries, and the worst part about it was mentally. It's I want to get back to it. Physically, I want to be doing these things, but mentally, I can't rush myself through this process. So sometimes, I don't know, just hearing that mental side of things is really important, I think, in sports, whether you're a man or a woman. I think the fact that she kind of talked about it and redefined success in her own terms was really inspiring. I think she won her first match, so good for her. She's already doing well. But yeah, I think, and you brought up a great point, so thank you for sharing that. And it's sports take a lot. They take a toll on your body, that's for sure.
Definitely. Well, next week, I'm looking forward to talking about more U.S. Open stuff, especially the outfits. The outfits at the U.S. Open are always so fun.
Love them.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that next week, and we'll have so much more on the next episode of Respect Her Game. Thank you so much for joining us.